Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigland Network show. My name is Emma Vigland, here to talk about the NFL offseason starting to heat up, plus the combine, the NFLPA's report card on different teams, then some NBA talk, NHL trade deadline talk. The first things first, hello, Bradley Alsop, my co-host and producer.
Wow.
You're back. You're back,
Oh
baby.
my gosh.
How's it feel?
I can't believe it.
Yeah.
It's a Monday.
I know.
I haven't been here on a Monday in quite some time.
That's true, actually.
So
Because you're right. It was your birthday weekend last weekend before you went down to Florida
I did.
with a few
And
friends.
you know what?
Did you
This
burn any
DeSantis guy's
books
got
when you were
something going on.
You burn any books down there?
I tried to find some, but there are none in the shelves.
That's
They're all gone.
yeah.
Weird.
Bradley was trying to, culturally assimilate to Florida, banning books or burning books there, but the you can't find them anymore except for like
Art of the Deal.
yeah.
Dreams from our founding fathers.
And for some reason, those are flame retardant.
Yeah, just don't work. Just lighter does not catch.
Yeah. Well, did you have a good time though?
Yes, lovely. It's very relaxing.
Yeah.
Happy to be back though. Look, we did not expect to have so much to talk about.
I know.
Yet here we are.
And it was a fun kind of NBA centric chat with Matt last week because that's his area of expertise.
Yes,
And
very glad we were able to get that.
I'm glad because Matt keeps his cards close to the vest, so I couldn't tell if it would have been annoying for him to have come on the show. So that's why I kept not because I was it's after work for him and he has other stuff to do.
We're self-conscious people.
Right. I'm exactly. I was trying to be way too polite. Turns out, no need to do that with Matt.
Matt had some stuff he wanted to get off his chest.
Yeah, and I hope that I provided that for him. So just a rundown, as I said, we're going to dive right into the NFL offseason. There is absolutely no end in sight to the NFL storylines that we see. I'm tipping my camera up a little bit. But I guess the big news of the day as of now, and we should say that the franchise tag deadline is tomorrow. So there will be more news after this episode goes up. But the Derek Carr found a landing spot. There you go.
Crash landing.
Yeah, well, in New Orleans. And I found that to be a curious decision. But it seems like they've been rumored for a long period of time. He visited there during his kind of extended free agency tour where he was able to get a head start on other people because he had a clause in his contract that required the Raiders to release him before a specific date, before a bunch of money kicked in on his contract. And so he had a month head start for ahead of other free agents, say, like Jimmy Garoppolo or others, Baker Mayfield, who might be landing in some of these chairs. He had his pick of the litter, and that's why I was a bit surprised about this contract in New Orleans. Now, as always, you have to look at the finer details of a contract to see what it's actually worth. When you get the initial numbers from someone like Ian Rappaport, it's going to be a lot more skewed towards the player because the agent is going to leak that information to the press. The team is not going to refute it because they don't want to piss off the player. But you look at the details and it's not as advertised. So he has a $28.5 million signing bonus. His base salary next season is just a little over $1 million because the Saints are in such a cap crunch. Then it goes to $30 million the next year, $40 million the year after that, but that's not fully guaranteed. There's some machinations there. And then his 2026 base salary is $50 million non-guaranteed. That's a fake number. He will not be on the Saints in 2026. He will likely be cut before that. It's kind of a similar back-end vanity number like he had with the Raiders. And so it's really a 3-year, $100 million deal, but it was advertised as a 4-year, $150 million deal. Take that final 50 off. Carr's a bridge quarterback for whoever they end up drafting, but I am much more pessimistic about the Saints roster than I think some NFL experts are. Not sure what your take is, Bradley.
I guess I was kind of interested that I sort of thought between, at least, and this isn't just me being, partial to the Jets roster, but I thought the Jets and the Panthers were potentially more optimizable, if that's a word, landing spots for Carr, only because I feel like one with the Jets, I feel like it's a pretty fully formed offense, despite some offensive line concerns, that he could kind of just be sort of plugged into. And like obviously the narrative for the Jets season from, basically since Breece Hall got injured until thereafter was that the biggest problem on what would otherwise be a particularly potent offense was just not having a quarterback. And then the same sort of went for the Panthers, is that even with, I think, towards the end of the season, kind of middling to subpar quarterback play from the likes of either mostly Sam Darnold or even PJ Walker at some points, not really Baker Mayfield, because that was sort of the nadir, I would say, of their quarterback play.
Right.
We saw some, at least, floor raising, I would say, from guys like DJ Moore and a pretty decent offensive line that is fully returning next year. There are no people leaving in free agency. Seemingly everyone's seemingly coming back on another deal, or at least they're maintaining their deals. So I thought those would be 1 and 2 before the Saints, only because, as we sort of discussed off air, like they're a bit of an aging team. Chris Olave, who I probably thought would have been the offensive rookie of the year this year, he wasn't even freaking nominated. Would be super enticing to me, but that's sort of the tip and remainder, like the tip of the spear, and sort of like who. That's kind of where it ends for me in terms of who I'd be excited to play with if I'm Derek Carr.
Yeah,
so
Michael Thomas is just collecting a check, basically.
Right.
He's
him and Kamara are not getting any younger. Neither are some of their pieces on the offensive line, like Eric McCoy and Ryan Ramczyk.
And their defense is as old as hell.
Absolutely, Cam Jordan is in his mid-30s. Marcus Davenport's again also, I think, either 30 or pushing 30.
And even their other pieces on defense, not to cut you off, Bradley.
No.
But I don't have like a ton of. I mean, they signed Tyrann Mathieu in the offseason, and he's really at the end of his rope there. Marshawn Lattimore has the capacity to play really high. Has high level cornerback play in him, but he often is quite boom or bust.
Yes, and I think so. I just feel like in terms of like full on roster construction combined with like financial flexibility concerns, I was sort of surprised that this is where he ended up. However, I feel like we were both talking about this as well, and some people in the chat are mentioning it too, that it might have also been kind of a level of competition concerns as well. That perhaps Carr would have the best chance to win a division or win the division on this Saints team as opposed to going into the AFC East. But I still think he probably would have had that chance with the Panthers as well. And I think that the Panthers are younger and better, and I'm more inspired by their coaching staff, newly minted under Frank Reich, than I am the Saints. So I'm curious to see what other people think about necessarily the incentives and the motives driving this move, and I'm curious, honestly, what this will look like on offense for the Saints team, and what they're able to do, if anything, given their financial constraints, to buttress this larger move.
Yeah, I think that we might also be overestimating what the interest was from Carolina's end, from the Jets'
certainly.
end.
It's definitely possible.
The Jets wanted to wait until Rodgers made his decision. Rodgers is screwing them, and he's not going to go to the Jets.
Yeah, I still, no matter how much ammo might be put towards it, like I will believe it when I see Aaron Rodgers touchdown in Florham Park, New Jersey.
Yeah,
if you don't give me that visual, I don't believe it. I don't think it's happening.
I mean, look, it might still happen. I get it. But I think Frank Reich is sick of these aging, declining,
that's a great point.
Veteran quarterbacks that he's had to deal with in Indianapolis for the past few years.
It's just been a carousel
forced
of bets
upon him by ownership. That might have been part of the deal when when Tepper hired him. Like, you can draft your guy and develop your guy, and there's a few really impressive quarterbacks in this draft. Which
let me build it, basically. Let me build something as opposed to have something brought into an infrastructure like Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz, Phillip Rivers.
And the Jets, it's just, I mean, I can imagine Woody Johnson is saying, wait until Rodgers makes his decision after his darkness retreat.
Absolutely. And the flash is so much more important than that, I think, in terms of they want to wait for the fireworks, even if they don't come.
They're not going to come. I mean, Rodgers, I'm like, 90% sure at this point is going to play one more year in Green Bay and
I
then
think
retire.
so. I'm still, yeah, my money is still on him returning to the Packers. I kind of feel like we've done this dance a few times the last few off seasons where it seems like the consternation from his camp reaches some sort of boiling point, or we hear more and more about his frustrations, but ultimately he is led back or cowed in some way to return to the team. I would say, honestly, barring him not signing a short-term deal with the Packers, I would almost bet on him retiring before playing for the Jets.
I don't think he's going to retire because I don't think he wants to be in the same Hall of Fame class as Brady.
Yes, right. Not have to share that billing.
He likes
Yeah.
attention. That's the thing about this.
Oh.
I mean, and he wasn't always this thirsty about it, I feel like, but in recent years he's been just loving the stirring the pot and getting the spotlight on him, and then pretending he doesn't want it and saying, well, you don't have to listen. Okay, well, dude, you're one of the top players in history in this sport, and you choose to go on multiple podcasts a week, it seems, and just say how you feel without a filter. So people are going to talk about it.
I don't think a residency on the Pat McAfee show leads to more humility.
Yeah, I would not say that.
I think your desire to shoot off takes from the hip probably increases drastically after like 10 to 20 appearances on the Pat McAfee show.
Yeah, and it's just like it's so silly. He's asking us to be totally ignorant about the way media works. Like, this is not your personal therapy session when you go on Pat McAfee. People are going to talk about it because it's media.
Right.
So, but putting that aside, I just feel like he likes this kind of pageantry. He likes the courting. He wants to feel like he's a recruit coming, more highly touted than he was, right, when he was at Cal or whatever.
And he likes the mystery too. He likes kind of being like, oh, like I'll leave. When he was at the golf tournament, being like, it's not going to be San Francisco. It's like that morsel of information probably doesn't matter.
Right.
But he I think appreciates it and is smart enough to know, oh, me saying that will trigger a news cycle.
Of course. He's no dummy. That's the thing about Rodgers.
That's important as well.
Rodgers is actually one of the smartest players in the NFL, but he's so rich and so closed off from reality at this point that he's begun to believe any bullshit that is fed to him, including like wellness nonsense, anti-vax nonsense, conspiracy nonsense.
Yeah, I see.
Kyrie's like that too.
I was just gonna say sometimes I find certain parallels between Kyrie and Rodgers pretty compelling.
Oh yeah, they're very similar guys, and they're
like
quite
not
mercurial.
Stupid. Yeah, mercurial, not stupid by any stretch, but also I think so much in hock to their own stuff that it doesn't become any sort of like their project when speaking to the media isn't sort of to like actually give their opinion. It's to sort of be like, it makes sense that you don't get it.
Yeah, right.
Like you're like, yeah, it totally does make sense that you don't get it. Like you're not where I am, so
right. And Kyrie would be like, it's because you're a Jew.
Yeah, like, well, when did I say that?
Yeah,
I didn't say that.
I didn't say that. No, did you hear me say that?
Yeah,
I meant Jewish.
Yeah, right.
As in the George
Kyrie
Santos Jewish kind of thing. But whatever. I mean, like, this does not move the needle for me at all. I mean,
no, I agree.
The Saints just were idiots in trading that first round pick for an extra player, thinking they could extend their window with Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton in New Orleans. I mean, I don't understand it.
It never really made the team
and I thought
construction didn't make sense.
Yeah, I thought they might tank for Caleb Williams, who's the next superstar in the NFL, maybe. But it seems like they're okay to be middling. And I worry that without Sean Payton's influence, this Saints team is going to go back to what it had been historically for so many years. One of the worst run franchises in the entire NFL.
Yeah, it is. It will be interesting in terms of like what the offensive staff under Dennis Allen like does with this group of players on offense, but also just like what the focus or emphasis will this team have, because it's not as if it's a fundamentally different thing if it's Sean Payton teaming up with Derek Carr in New Orleans, like to kind of. It's a different thing knowing that that this is very clearly not Dennis Allen's forte. So like, because he's a defensive minded head coach and he's a defensive coordinator by trade, that who not only who is going to be kind of influencing the offense, but like what are they going to do? Because I don't think this is a complete side just because they have Derek Carr now.
No,
I,
I think this is a move from a team that wants to have their ticket prices not completely fall off a cliff,
right.
and isn't serious about rebuilding. I think it's a half measure. This is not the way good franchises operate. Not saying that the Saints haven't been very good for as a franchise for the past 20 years, but in my opinion, it might have been a little bit more Sean Payton being the sheriff as opposed to the team overall over there in New Orleans being strong. I don't like the move for the Saints, but I haven't really liked their moves since Peyton's left. And even before that, I thought the Michael Thomas extension was not going to end well, and it hasn't. So, sorry, Saints fans, but I don't really have a ton positive to say about this, except for the fact that it's a team-friendly contract. He is going to you can get out of it in 3 years, and even before that if you really want to. So it's not big money for a guy like Carr.
Right. And it's just, I guess it's really just, I have the least amount of excitement with this pairing, I would say. I mean, I love Olave. I think Olave is great, but he's one person on this team. And he's going to be, and he's a second-year player, so he's young, which is great. I mean, in the sense of like he'll have a pretty reliable option quarterback, and he was even able to get over 1,000 yards with Andy Dalton and
Right.
Jameis Winston at the helm. So that's exciting. I think to a degree. Just I think it'll help him. Like his progression will be fun to watch it basically, but whoever's behind center. But that's not enough necessarily for me to think that this is like a win necessarily for the Saints, because I can't see the vision just yet as to what exactly this will foretell for them when they actually get on the field. I feel like I could have seen it so much more with the Jets and the Panthers, but like you said, perhaps that was the scuttlebutt to kind of keep the value higher, despite maybe the Saints being the most locked into him from the very,
get-go.
very beginning.
Yeah. It's funny that Andy Dalton's on that team too. Kind of similar careers to them.
Oh yeah. I think that's pretty dead on.
Yeah. Anyway, some more news before the tag deadline. Like, the franchise tags starting to roll in. Tony Pollard tagged for the Dallas Cowboys. I feel badly for him. I think the next CBA they need to put a clause in that franchise tags can't be applied to running backs. But who knows? I mean,
well, there's that in the sense of like kind of how the incentive structure is almost so much worse for running backs. We already always talk about how they're probably the most fungible piece of an NFL roster, and then even if they're getting tagged, they're not getting nearly as much money as certain other skill position players are as well. But then also, what I found interesting, I was listening to the Athletic football show recently. I didn't realize this, but the tag I think is basically the same for every offensive lineman, despite positional value being quite
interesting.
Different. Like
for
you would
guard versus tackle.
or you even specific. You would think just knowing how valuable and how kind of scarce a blue chip left tackle is relative to like a right guard or a left guard or even a center, that the tag is pretty much the same for every player. And which I would, of course, if I'm a lineman, I'd be annoyed that knowing that like, a linebacker or against a defensive tackle or defensive lineman is different. Yet there is a clear positional hierarchy in terms of value, and yet it's completely flattened amongst that position group.
Yeah.
The tag is weird. It's just like I think it really is kind of fickle based on
it's
how
an anti-worker provision,
right?
And I mean, Evan Ingram spoke out about this too. Just was tagged by the Jaguars. The tag for a tight end is much lower than the tag for a receiver, even if the Evan Ingram's playing quite a similar role in terms of production. It's around $11.3 million next year. So, but the fact that in terms of value, a tight end like that, based on what I know about the NFL market, is only $1 million more than the running back franchise tag, that seems ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it's like
the franchise tag for the running back is that should not be allowed given what the league is doing to those contracts.
Right. And just the shelf life and the the standard average length of a running back's career.
Right.
That serves to make guys like Tony Pollard make less, just fundamentally, because knowing that relative to a quarterback or relative to some other position players, a guy like Tony Pollard is almost just statistically going to be out of the league before some other players
right,
are, and have less ability to make money. Just purely by the standards of time.
Yeah, it's the wheels fall off really quickly once running backs do fall off,
right.
and I feel for a guy like Pollard, especially because he injured himself in the playoffs, broke his leg. Right. I mean, it's that.
And as we were saying, was just fundamentally pretty clearly the better option than Ezekiel Elliott. And that Zeke was basically still getting touches or even splitting touches to a degree because of the sheer amount of money that they sunk into him with that huge albatross-like contract at this point.
Well, let's put up that quote I sent. I was just reminded from maybe last week. We're a little bit late to it, but Mike McCarthy was asked, I think at the Combine, about the recent change at offensive coordinator with Kellen Moore leaving. They're bringing in Schottenheimer to coordinate the run game, which is kind of his specialty. But this is the reasoning that Mike McCarthy gives. And the way that the run game, as we just discussed, was designed the whole year with the Cowboys seemed very influenced by ownership. There was the shoehorning in of Ezekiel Elliott when all of the analytics and all of the eye tests showed that Tony Pollard should be getting more touches, was better between the tackles and in space. And they were pretending like, Zeke Elliott was at this point Derek Henry, like the guy that's going to move the chains. That's not who he is anymore. But this quote from Mike McCarthy made me laugh as a Giants fan and just be so grateful that the Cowboys franchise was too cheap to let Mike McCarthy go on his second year, even though they had courted Sean Payton for years and he's out of the division. I'm thrilled about that. But here's this quote from McCarthy. I've been where Kellen has been. Kellen wants to light the scoreboard up. Well, he's the offensive coordinator, so...
But that's not important.
No, I guess not. This is what Mike McCarthy says. But I want to run the damn ball so I can rest my defense.
It's 2023.
I know. I think so. Points as an offensive coordinator, not as important as resting the defense through the run game.
The point is resting the defense. That's why you go on the field.
I think when you're a coordinator, you're in charge of the offense. Being a head coach and being a play caller, you're a little more in tune with everything. I don't desire to be the number one offense in the league.
Why would you?
He comes from an offensive background.
Why would you want that?
Why is he talking like Mike Zimmer?
Yeah, he's Monty Kiffin over here.
I don't desire to be the number one offense in the league. I want to be the number one team in the league, and with a number of wins and a championship. And if we got to give up some production and take care of the ball better than to get that, then that's what we'll do because we have a really great defense. Okay. The final part of that I don't have as much of a problem with, right? Like, they want to play complementary football. I understand that. But you can say that, and that can be your focus. Like, I want to marry the defensive game plan with the offense more, and hey, Kellen wasn't working that well with Dan Quinn. Fine. That's a perfectly acceptable answer. But I am not convinced that that's his mindset, given the quote at the beginning of that. It's all about keeping the defense off the field. We don't care if we're the number one scoring offense. I'm sorry. Again, do you exist in 1982? The entire league has been stacked, for better or for worse, in favor of the offensive side of the ball. And the top teams that win right now are top offenses. That's it.
But also, why is this idea mutually exclusive to
It's
him?
not.
Why the if-then proposition here from McCarthy seems to be like, if we have the number one offense, then we ultimately will not be the number one team. But I don't know why that would be the case necessarily.
It's a false binary.
Right. I don't think
this false choice.
I don't think that's the choice. I think the choice is like, you can I think you can run the damn ball while still having like a creative and potent offense. Like I don't.
You know what keeps your defense off the field? Getting first downs.
Yeah,
So
right.
going three
Yardage.
and out when you're trying to run the damn ball, then your defense comes back on the field.
Yeah,
Even
that's
if
bad.
the clock is technically ticking forward because there was not an incompletion.
What if I call a timeout? What if I throw a challenge flag that I don't have? That I forgot that I played before.
Right. Does that keep the defense off the field?
It's wild to me because I see a quote like this and I'm like, oh, so like it maybe this is probably, of course you can't, it's hard to convey or indicate or like understand motive when coaches say certain things like this, and I think it might just be a testament to how uniquely rotted like your brain becomes when you are an NFL head coach. As in, I'm thinking in particularly about how Todd Bowles is asked about, why the Bucks only did no huddle offense in the last few minutes of the game when that was clearly their best offensive positioning, and he would just go, well, because we need to establish the run more.
Mm-hmm.
We just say
that's the same mentality.
The offense will.
But he's a defensive head coach.
Wait, so it almost makes more sense coming from Bowles, even though it's still unsound.
Archaic, right? Yeah.
But it's almost more shocking to hear it from McCarthy, who's that, like you said, was even his calling card in Green Bay. Like it doesn't really. It's hard to parse this with the same contention that these guys are committed to winning football games.
Yeah, it is. Mike McCarthy versus time. It's like Apollo Creed versus Rocky. I mean, it just never
an epic battle.
It's going down to the wire here, and I'm pretty sure time's gonna win. But anyway, I'm so happy that you coach the Dallas Cowboys, Mike McCarthy. I hope you get a long extension.
And so is Jerry
retire
Jones.
There, yeah, he is. I guess he's on the. Jerry Jones was too cheap to fire him after 2 years. He always wanted Sean Payton. He's missed his window, and now, I mean, we'll see. How I kind of am predicting a firing at the end of this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it will be hard to justify not doing so if one of two things happen or if both things happen. Meaning, if the offense is demonstrably worse without Kellen Moore. Meaning that the half measure of firing Moore didn't actually make anything better.
And Mike McCarthy's calling plays
right,
now.
And then also, obviously, then the cause and effect being McCarthy calling these plays and the offense being worse. And or two, if Moore also has a significant degree of success in L.A. with Justin Herbert and the Chargers, because we, of course, know that, I mean, Jerry is a petty old rich man. He's absolutely going to be like, why the heck did I fire that guy? And he's doing great in another team, and I still have freaking Mike McCarthy. So
because of you, Jerry.
Yeah, and it's like the answer is within the question, which is why did I do this?
Yeah.
He's
in the hot dog suit.
Right. It's like, we're all trying to figure out who did this. So I could definitely see that. I just think it does really depend, on it will be, in my view, a direct comparison to what came before it.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I mean, which makes sense, I guess. So you can only really be as good as your last season, and they were able to win a playoff game, but
against the Bucks,
right? And but
the Bucks were one of the worst playoff teams over the 100%. Past 10 years.
You factor in the level of competition and also how things looked when in the clutch, in the essentially same exact situation they were in a year ago when
they're so
Dak Prescott forgot to hand the ball to the ref.
They are so undisciplined.
That's his prologue.
That would drive me insane as an owner. Well, I don't like to put myself in the shoes of the owners, but that would drive me insane as a fan. How about that? Mike McCarthy is arrogant and undisciplined. I think that's one of the things that bothers me most about him, or would bother me as a Cowboys fan. In fact, I love it as a Giants fan. All right, let's touch on the combine because and also I should say, we're still on Saquon versus Daniel Jones franchise tag watch. Lamar Jackson.
That as well. Yeah, two storylines unresolved still.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly, if the Giants want to tag Daniel Jones and let Saquon walk, I am not going to be upset. But the Lamar Jackson storyline is much more interesting because if the Ravens apply the non-exclusive tag, some team could pick him up and then the Ravens would get 2 first-round picks. And that is an interesting proposition because I think that they might be done with this contract situation and dealing with a guy who doesn't have an agent. I mean, like if this was any other team, I'd have a lot less faith in the offer that they provided for him. But by all accounts, the offer was pretty good. Even though the stuff leaking from Lamar's campaign has been downplaying it, or team, I should say. Gosh, again, Monday. Campaign. I just want Lamar to get his money, and I think he's played this really wrong. I think he's burned some bridges in that organization, maybe in the locker room by not playing, even though, hey, sit out if you need your money. I get it. I just wish he took that offer earlier because I think no matter what, he's not going to get that same amount of money that he was offered earlier by the Ravens.
Yeah, the worst case scenario for both sides is either somehow, some way, the Ravens lose Lamar and get nothing, and B,
they can't because they can tag him exclusively and then trade him, or they can tag him non-exclusively and they'll get those 2 first round.
So right, so I guess they are set up to at least return something. But what I'm curious about is, I'm wondering if maybe putting the tag on him and trading them might make more sense for the team, only because perhaps maybe they could get more than just 2 first-round picks, potentially.
Yeah, that's true.
The other thing, though, is with Lamar, like you said, I just hope he doesn't find himself in a position where this has become too onerous for not only the Ravens themselves, but also any other team who might be thinking about entering some sort of negotiation process if they're even able to successfully trade for him.
Yeah. And
I'm wondering if this is deflating his value just by virtue of it being a difficult situation.
Yeah, they don't want to deal with his mom. It's not. I'm not trying to offend anybody here. I want Lamar Jackson to get as much money as possible. He's one of my favorite players I've ever seen play. And another good point that I've been hearing is Lamar's lack of agent has also hurt him with endorsements. I mean, when's the last time you saw Lamar in a commercial outside of that one Heisman one? Seriously. He should be one of the most marketable players in the NFL. And he doesn't have any endorsements from my understanding.
And I think that's it though, is that it's not even what's hard about this conversation is it's this isn't us touting the pieties and the
well, we love agents.
Yeah, good intentions of all agents in the NFL. It's more just it would also potentially help if he had a good agent looking out for his best interest, that he wouldn't have to be balancing not just the interfacing with coaches from an X's and O's gameplay perspective, but also doing that while understanding that the representative for whether that person, that being Lamar, will stay with the organization to do that is him.
Yeah.
It's essentially it's almost as if, and this is not exactly 1-to-1, but it's essentially if Lamar was working at a company or working or on a team, suing the team, and they were still working together, but Lamar also happened to be the attorney representing himself in a lawsuit.
Right.
Things would be awkward. It's also probably just awkward now because whenever he speaks to the GM, whenever he speaks to the owner, whenever he speaks to John Harbaugh, it's not just Lamar the player, it's Lamar the agent.
That is one of the benefits of having an agent, is that it is you can compartmentalize the business.
There's a barrier,
with
right?
The play, yeah.
There's a conduit between business and what's on the field. Obviously, they are one and the same, but at least one person can be delegated to talk about these things, and whatever ire or awkwardness or frustration can go through the people who go through that person, and not through Lamar directly.
Yeah, I mean it's guys, it's not an anti-Lamar thing to say that if he had an agent, he would in total make more money, including the fees that he's providing to the agent to negotiate the deal. I think that's irrefutable. And I just am bummed to see how these contract negotiations have gone, because that marriage between Ravens team philosophy, them being one of the most pro-player organizations in the entire league, Lamar's style of play, him being all about football and that kind of thing, I loved it. But I think this marriage is coming to an end,
And they
unfortunately.
hired Todd Monken, and they hired the University of Georgia offensive coordinator to replace Greg Roman. I think it's a fantastic hire, and I want to see Lamar
Yeah.
play with Todd Monken. Todd Monken was able to make Stetson Bennett, who was like a 25-year-old seventh year senior, have ambitious and entertaining and in genuine run packages that work to his advantage. Imagine what he could do with Lamar Jackson.
I know. What
And-
if they do that non-exclusive franchise tag and then they have multiple first-round picks they can package for Anthony Richardson?
Well, that's I think we need to. I think we need to get you a job interview.
Let's
Ravens.
let's talk about the combine. All right, guys, I'm gonna get this out of the way. I would not touch Bryce Young in the top 10. Would not do it. You guys know how I feel about Tua. He reminds me a lot of Tua. There's nothing elite about Bryce Young except for maybe his brain. In terms of his physical attributes, like he's 204 at the combine. Do you guys know how much
5'10", 204, yeah.
they bulk up in preparation for that weigh-in? It's always going to be a little bit more, maybe 10 pounds more than they play on when the season starts, let alone all the cardio and sweat that happens when they go through the season. I mean, I know this as a Giants fan. Daniel Jones, he's much heavy. He was much heavier, bulked up going into training camp. You're sweating a bunch in the heat during that training camp, and you lose a bunch of weight. Like Bryce Young is not going to be playing at 204 pounds. He looks really small. And when you're drafting that high, especially if we're talking about the first overall pick, I would not touch him at all. I mean, I'm a huge CJ Stroud fan in this draft, but it's not just CJ Stroud. In terms of what I would want in the quarterback for my team, I would take Will Levis and Anthony Richardson over Bryce Young as of right now.
Well, because I'm thinking if I'm a NFL like prognosticator, and I am, that then I was kind of separating the four guys into two camps. The way I think it would be traditionally done is like, oh, okay, like Bryce Young and CJ Stroud are more like all around talents. Like they're not they probably have a higher floor, maybe a little bit of a lower ceiling, but definitely just in terms of like quarterback competence, higher floor than like Levis.
Well, they're in more professional systems.
Right, and that's the thing too. Exactly, they're coming from Alabama, coming from Ohio State. Not as much as a college oriented program, almost like a pipeline for the NFL, which is like, I mean, of course, fair enough. They're the SEC and Big Ten, big powerhouses. Not to say anything about not to knock Florida or Kentucky, but I think it is a little different. But then Levis and Richardson, while maybe being a little bit more raw, definitely I would say have higher ceilings just from their physical attributes and what they can, and their arm talent and what they can do with the ball and their speed.
And that's what you should draft for. That's my philosophy.
With that being said, I agree with you, and I also would say I just see Stroud as being a tier above Bryce Young from a talent and from a comprehensive, holistic standpoint, looking at him and everything he is capable of doing. I think if I were to take a swing in the top 10, I'd rather take a swing on a guy like Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, especially after how Richardson tested at the combine.
Oh my gosh.
And if it's even possible, if you can make this happen, if a team can make this happen where you are able to draft a guy like that and not put him necessarily in a position where he has to start right away, and you can have a stopgap backup veteran quarterback who that quarterback of Will Levis or Anthony Richardson can learn behind, or at least just learn to be an NFL player without the added pressure of having to start week one. I think that's ideal. I think I would almost rather that than putting all of my eggs in the basket of Bryce Young, knowing that under what we're about, based on what we are understanding about this draft class, Bryce Young would be a quarterback who would be starting week one.
Well, I mean, he's a professional. He's coming out of Alabama, but this has happened how many years in a row at this point? Tua, I don't think is going to be a very good pro, and I think he's on a stacked team. They might not even pick up his fifth-year option. Like, they might try to move on from him in Miami. We'll see. But
And also health
Before,
consider. I mean, we have to
yes.
even figure out if
Well,
he can
but that's part
play.
of this is the same this is the same conversation we're having about Bryce Young. Less injury prone than
Mm,
Tua, seems to have more control over his body, but these are like I do not buy into this trend of point guard quarterback play. I'm sorry. I think that you need to be a certain size to have success for the most part. We have seen one quarterback, two quarterbacks win Super Bowls that are smaller. Drew Brees, Russell Wilson are examples off the top of my head. But for the most part,
and like the
like,
jury's still out on Kyler Murray. It's not even as if we are like
yeah.
that's a known quantity. That's a sure shot. You pick that guy number one overall. I don't think even with his extension. I think what we're looking about that, especially given everything with Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, like
And he's hurt.
as probably a mistake.
And
Yeah,
also,
it's
it's
probably
honestly
a
almost
short-sighted decision.
insulting to Kyler Murray to compare Bryce Young to him because Kyler Murray is one of the fastest
Right,
quarterbacks in the
elite speed,
entire
at least
NFL.
at the very least, elite speed.
Bryce Young and Tua, despite having similar stature, neither of them are as fast as that guy. Like, Tua can scramble a little bit, but mostly both of these guys have to be in the pocket. And for Bryce Young, he was 5 offensive linemen in front of him. Most likely all of them are going to go to the NFL.
Right, right.
At Alabama.
That's almost like a guarantee if you're an Alabama quarterback. Like you were playing behind like 5 to 7 blue chip offensive linemen every year, like first round, second round draft picks.
And I think there's a reason that there's been less success with Alabama first round quarterbacks because there's a consistent trend of this incredible program making pedestrian quarterbacks seem better than they are.
Right.
And I like even Mac Jones you can put into that, and he's been better than some of the other examples that I mentioned there. But I mean, for me, I think it's CJ Stroud and everybody else right now because even though I like Will Levis and Anthony Richardson's upside, and Richardson, it's eye popping. It's not a guarantee that they're going to go to the right organization that will develop them, and then everyone's going to be like, "Ha ha! You would have taken him over Bryce Young, who's in a system where it's a lot safer and his floor is higher." I still would rather have faith in my coaching staff to coach up a guy like that.
But I have the same concern of a similar dynamic occurring to somebody like Bryce Young, and I would compare that to the I can't remember if it was 2019 or 2020, whichever draft that Trevor Lawrence was drafted first overall. Obviously, I'm not comparing Young and Lawrence as players. I'm saying in terms of the
2021.
Maybe it's 2021.
Yeah.
I'm comparing the idea of like a quarterback that's kind of seen as like more like sure thing material, can start, professional, like has the tools to be a starter, goes into a terrible, maybe the worst situation from a team standpoint with Urban Meyer as a first year head coach, handcuffing him by like almost intentionally taking away weapons from him that he wanted to be in the starting lineup with him, not really knowing a lot of the personnel or the play style for him, and he did not look good, and he certainly didn't look nearly as good as people thinking he was going to come out of college from Clemson and be the next Peyton Manning. I think a sure thing quarterback like that can certainly also be completely tarred and completely compromised by going to a bad team as well. So like I also think it's potentially a hard decision to think for not only for a team but for a player. It's like if the organization is dysfunctional, you can be as good as anybody and still not succeed.
Yeah. That's 100% on point. It really is just I guess I just think so highly of CJ Stroud that I find the comparison to Bryce Young to be semi-offensive. Like there's no comparison.
No, I agree.
There's no comparison in throwing. There's no comparison in traits.
Yeah.
I mean, Stroud's smart. He has everything you want, and he was also clutch as hell against Georgia. And I feel like those are the kinds of things that sometimes I don't put at the top of my list, but it was just seeing him play that well in such a high pressure situation that should also give you whatever the opposite of concern is.
And he's 6'3",
Yeah.
6'4". Like
Well,
he's like that beyond probably being the most NFL ready quarterback of these four. He also just has the size.
yes.
And has and specifically, not to put too fine a point on it, but as you said, he's got 3 to 4 inches of height on Bryce Young.
Yeah.
And 20 pounds.
I mean, guys, what does Bryce Young do well? Like from a physical perspective, okay? We can point this out. I mean, CJ Stroud, it's basically everything, right? He's a pinpoint passer. He can make all the throws. He has great mechanics and a very efficient release and motion. Will Levis' arm, that's like a rocket, okay? It's hard, strong, needs work on accuracy and not taking as bad of hits. But you can point to that being an elite trait for him, right? Really, really strong arm for Will Levis. Anthony Richardson, it's really strong arm, incredible athleticism. Never seen these kinds of measurables from anybody at the quarterback position in terms of size and speed combination. Coming in at 244 and then running, what did he run?
He ran a 4.44 or 4.43.
Absurd, absurd.
Yeah.
I mean, those are elite traits. Talk about that.
He almost completely outpacing Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert in the 40. Not to say they're obvious. Again, they're data points, but
Right.
but he has really eye popping, like you said, like pretty unprecedented measurables and testing for a guy who's essentially body comp is Derek Henry, as a quarterback,
and definitely raw, not as raw as someone like Malik Willis coming out last year. Played in a program that's a bit more. The level of competition's higher than that of Liberty.
Yep.
But like accuracy also a huge issue for Anthony Richardson. But you see the elite traits. For me, Bryce Young being a smart player. That's not a physical trait, right? And I think sometimes smarts can be overvalued and conflated with good coaching in certain programs. You have to have faith in your ability to communicate with players and coach them up, and they can be the smart player too eventually as well. That wasn't like what people thought about Mahomes coming out, that he was Mr. Smart Guy, but now he sees the field better than anybody, and he has all the physical traits.
And I'm not even necessarily saying I think like Young isn't a first round talent, and I'm also not necessarily saying he doesn't have he does have pluses to his game. I mean, I think he is like similar in terms of an Alabama quarterback product. Like you said, he definitely has high processing speed. He definitely will most likely be like a professional grade player coming in day one, and he definitely isn't accurate. He has accuracy, but I think what both of me and you were saying to varying degrees is, if we're thinking about a team being in the top 10, top 5, I'd probably rather take a risk, either take a risk on Levis and Richardson, or be more confident in the sure thing that is Stroud, both in terms of or multiply in terms of passing ability, rushing ability, size, and even if you want to factor in something, that's why I'm saying it's fourth, intangibles of being a guy who in high pressure situations can deliver significantly.
Yeah.
And we've seen that. We just saw that in the sense, of course, they didn't win the game, but
not because of him.
Georgia beat Ohio State 42-41, and then went on to beat TCU 65-7.
Yeah.
Stroud kept them in the game with the most dominant college football team in quite some time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All across the board. I think I know it's narrative, and I know it's intangible, and I know it's mostly coming off of track record in college. I understand that, but I don't think it doesn't count. And I also definitely think NFL front offices do take that stuff into consideration.
Too much. So, but
yeah, certainly.
But this is a situation where those things kind of link up, with a prospect. So I'm just such a big Stroud fan that I feel like he's getting a little bit disrespected with this Bryce Young hype.
I would probably, if I'm the number one team, if I'm the team at number one, I'm taking him first overall, or if I'm the Bears, I'm trying to probably gas up Stroud to a degree, to base in that respect, to be like, it's gonna take a decent amount, but like we will take it if you give it to us in terms of if you really want CJ Stroud.
Look, the Texans, I mean, they're sitting there at 2. They have so many picks upcoming. I would just be like, just throw them a first round pick to move up one spot, and then they can still get
Right,
Will Anderson
right.
or something. Like they need to figure out their. I don't want them getting stuck with Bryce Young just because like they choose not to be aggressive about it. Because they need a game changer at that position, and I'm not sure any of the other 3 guys are as safe and as sure of a thing as Stroud.
And
not that anyone's a sure thing, but that's just my read on it.
and I guess I think in terms of team building too, like the Texans are as blank of a slate as a team can come by, especially on offense. They don't really. I mean, the best person on that team offensively is probably their left tackle. It's probably Laramie Tunsil.
Yeah.
And
Can you name anyone else on the
that's
team,
what
basically?
it's like. You have Chris Moore and Jordan Akins at wide receiver. Does anybody know who those guys are?
Yeah.
But I'm a sicko, and that's why I know who they are. It's like they were pushing out a 2-headed dragon of Davis Mills and Jeff Driscoll at quarterback.
Yeah, right.
So I'm thinking, of course, even if it's to move up 1 pick from 2 to 1. You could start off this new regime under D'Amico Ryans with a foundational building block that, yeah, of course we're projecting, we're extrapolating, but it does really seem like you could build something significant from CJ Stroud out.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you want to start this off with a foundational piece, as you say, and I totally agree with you there. All right, let's talk a bit about the
Oh, sorry. Someone Bryce Craver in the YouTube chat is reminding me. Damian Pierce is good. I like Damian.
Oh yeah,
Pierce.
he is good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that would be a fun tandem. CJ
Good
Stroud,
thing the
Damian
running
Pierce.
back's the most important piece for a team. Sorry, not to be a jerk, but
No, poor guys.
yeah. Brendan from Kentucky says, I think Henson Hooker could be a late round pick if a team are willing to bet on his knee healing well. Hooker made good reads, runs decently with accurate and moderate arm strength. Another disclaimer is he's 25 years old already, though. Yeah, I'm not that high on Hooker, but I hear what you're saying. And I need to see more. He needs to go to a team where he can heal as well. I would imagine he's going to go in the second round.
Yeah, the age is tough, but he really, honestly, he was, in my opinion, a real Heisman contender before he got injured. But I understand. I mean, it is fair. He is 25 as well. So,
Yeah.
I also factor that in terms of like age, especially coming out of the draft. Like,
And I knew it was Hendon Hooker. It was just a typo. Yeah.
yeah.
I was like, did I get that wrong? No, it's Hendon.
It's amazing. Like, I feel so, like, just as an example, I feel so confident. I felt confident and great seeing how much the Jaguars improved with everything that they did in the offseason, but then also remembering, oh, right, like Trevor Lawrence is 21 years old.
Yeah,
like,
right.
The future, like, there is still so many years for him to even get to where he might be, like, reaching his peak.
Right.
So, yeah, I really do think age matters when it comes into that as well.
All right, so let's do this crazy NFLPA report card story here.
Oh, yeah.
So the NFLPA had this extensive report that came out the other day where they gave grades, or they didn't really give the grades themselves. They surveyed the players within the union on these teams about what workplaces of these 32 teams are the most favorable to players, treat their players the right way, and what teams do not. And there are some not so shocking teams at the bottom of the list. Let's start right there at the top. This was one of the most egregious ones, the Arizona Cardinals. I cannot believe how embarrassing some of the details are of this. Let's scroll down a little bit to the overview. Here it is. The Arizona Cardinals rank second to last in their overall score among the 32 NFL clubs. The locker room does not have confidence that owner Michael Bidwill is willing to invest to upgrade the facilities, as he ranks the lowest in that category across the league. The responses that provide the bases for that characterization include the worst-ranked weight room, which some players feel is a safety hazard. And if you go further into the report, they talk about how the floorboards are coming up. But scroll back up. Can you just zoom in slightly? My eyes without my glasses, they're failing me. One more would be awesome. Yes. Um, the worst ranked weight room, which some players feel is a safety hazard, an outdated training room and locker room, and a policy of, this is the kicker, deducting dinner from players' paychecks should players want to get food from the facility. There are very few teams that don't offer free dinner, and the Cardinals are one of them. Look at these grades here. Treatment of families, F, tied for last. Food service and nutrition, F minus, tied for last. Weight room, 32nd, that is last. Strength, all of these teams get good strength coaches. They get ranked because it seems like, I don't know. There's a lot of guys that tell them how to lift, and that's those jobs are probably fairly highly coveted in the fitness industry, and like they have good relationships with the players. But go down to the training room again, F minus, tied for last. Just the Cardinals are an embarrassment in this way. F minus, I didn't even know you could do that grade. It is one of 14 teams that doesn't offer a family room to its players, one of 11 teams that does not offer daycare. So if you're an NFL player on the Arizona Cardinals and you're trying to get better, you might feel a little bit less incentivized to stay at your club, working late, grinding over film, working out, because you realize that your meal is going to get deducted from your damn paycheck. These guys are billionaire owners. It's completely inexcusable. Let's go to the Washington Commanders too, because that's another horrific example. And I should say, I think like the overall grade of the Giants, they were 8th or something, which made me happy. I think the Jets were a little lower on the list. Sorry, Bradley. But infamously, the Washington Commanders, the most horrifically run and cheap franchise in the NFL, although the Cardinals really do give them a run for their money in terms of this ranking system. The Washington Commanders are ranked 32nd last in our team guide. Besides the strength coaches who received great feedback and grades as one of the best groups in the league, the rest of the club's operations and facilities were rated by player respondents at the bottom of every single category. The locker room does not have confidence that the club owner, Dan Snyder, is willing to invest to upgrade the facilities, as player responses ranked him 31st in this category. I guess Bidwell was the one that was 32nd. Players had significantly more concerns with each area of the facility than the player respondents on any other team. For example, they were the team most consistently identified as having an understaffed training room. Players also reported that they have some of the smallest hot and cold tubs for players' recovery, and only 35% of players feel like they have enough personal space in their locker room. Finally, there are complaints of a lack of warm water and issues with poor drainage in the showers. And then they're one of course, the teams that choose to cheap out on hotel rooms, having some of their players share hotel rooms, which again, these are billion dollar organizations. They don't play many away games a year. This is not the NBA where they're playing 41 away games. This is the NFL, and they're only playing 9 or 10 away games, or 9 or 8, I guess. So it's not that hard to pay for hotel rooms from one of these teams. So treatment of families, F, tied for last. D plus, food service and nutrition. C plus, weight room, it's a little bit better. F minus for training room, tied for last. Team travel, 32nd. I mean, again, the fish rots from the head down, and it's not shocking, I should say, that neither of these teams have been quite successful during their owner's tenure, because this treatment of your players matters. It really does for their performance. Let's go to another egregious example, if we could go back. If we go to the Raiders, we might have to scroll to find this under Las Vegas. I know that's hard to figure out at this point. Go to the coaches. Scroll down, because some of their other grades aren't too bad. Not strength coaches, training staff. Maybe it's in that red here. I'm forgetting where I saw this, but they did a separate report card, maybe, or I saw an article about it where they said that Josh McDaniels was horrible to work with. It might be. I'm not sure. Here we go. There it's in the overview. We found it. At this workplace, the lowest graded category was the coaching staff. Player respondents felt that head coach Josh McDaniels is less likely to listen to his players and keeps them for longer hours than other head coaches around the league. Longer hours are not correlated with winning, as 7 of the 8 top coaches rated as being most efficient with their players' time in 2020. The 2022 survey made the playoffs this year. So I just some stuff that has followed Josh McDaniels throughout his career. That he is a hard ass, and a hard ass to a point that makes zero sense. So I can't believe that the Raiders chose to really triple down on his leadership there. But maybe this kind of public shaming will get him to change his ways. I don't know. All right, let's go back though. Check out some of the rest of the ratings. We're highlighting the bad ones because it's interesting, but these are some of the grades here. Scroll up. F for the Jaguars facility. They had a rat problem recently. F for the Bengals facility, one of the cheapest ownership groups in the entire league. Or that's treatment of families, I should say. F for the Bengals. Let's do organize it by the treatment of families for worst part. Here we go. The worst teams in the league at the bottom. The Commanders, the Jaguars, the Bengals, the Cardinals, the Steelers, interestingly. Scroll down because it's more than... There's F minuses, I believe. Or is that the end? Okay, never mind. Now, let's do some of the other categories here. I don't know about you guys, but I find this endlessly fascinating. Nutrition. Good. The Cowboys don't cheap out. Here we go. In terms of the meals that are provided for the teams, again, the Cardinals at the bottom, the Saints at the bottom, the Bengals at the bottom, the Chargers at the bottom. These are some of the cheapest owners. The Lions, the Panthers. There's no excuse given him being one of the richest owners in the NFL. But yeah, I mean, you guys get the picture. I believe that the Minnesota Vikings were the top-rated team in terms of what, how players felt overall about that organization. And I think the Giants were 8. I'm trying to find... I should have found those full rankings. But regardless, like, you guys can get the picture. It's... I like the survey because this is the only way you're going to get some of these owners to change, is when they're publicly shamed, because they own the team and they can operate as they want to. But yeah, I'm so glad the NFLPA did this.
Yeah, I think it's really clarifying, and especially I'm happy about it too, in the sense that this also gives players an opportunity to make these observations and make these positions known without fear of any sort of retaliation.
Yeah,
in that it's backed by their union, and it's not, they don't have to put their names to their comments, which I think is important to anonymize it so owners don't know who is talking shit about them. I don't even mean that derisively for the players. I mean in the sense that they would obviously, a guy like Dan Snyder, a guy like Mike Brown for the Bengals, a guy like Bidwell, I'm sure.
For the Cardinals.
I mean, you think that.
And by the way, I found the full rankings here. Chargers all the way at the bottom at 30th, and the Chiefs are 29th. That's partially because they got an F on team travel, and apparently they also were pressuring players to hide their injuries during that process. So kind of inexcusable given their prominence over the past 10 years that they have that kind of philosophy.
Absolutely.
And bad. But here we go. We'll do the best at the top. Vikings, then Dolphins. The Dolphins are consistently A+, AAA, except for treatment of families, and part of that's like maybe they don't have a family room, which, hey, I mean, I'm happy to see that with the Dolphins because you don't necessarily associate that with that organization.
And I'm sure that's slightly more palatable if everything else is A+ material, A material. And
maybe it was Mike McDaniel. He seems like the kind of guy to treat his guys
right. Right, I agree.
But the Vikings were the only team that had A's in the A range, A- A's across the board. Then the Raiders at 3rd, despite that Josh McDaniels thing. The Texans at 4th, which is also shocking. Cowboys at 5th. That's not because they have so much money. Packers at 6, 7th 49ers, 8th Giants, 9th Bills, 10th Saints, 11th Seahawks, 12th Panthers, 13th Bears, 14th Eagles, then the
Oh, interesting.
Lions, then the
Eagles is
Colts, then the Ravens, then the
league average,
Titans,
sort of.
then the Jets at 19th,
Great job,
or the
guys.
20th, actually. Broncos, Browns, Steelers, Falcons, Patriots. Patriots not well ranked in terms of their workplace culture, which I think is,
Do your job, Emma.
part of the issue at this point. Then Rams, which you would not think, but I think it's mostly because their training facility is under construction. So I think they're still behind the ball. We saw it in Hard Knocks when,
Hmm.
that must have been during COVID. Scratch that. So that's why they were outside. Um, Buccaneers, Bengals, Jaguars, Chiefs, Chargers, Cardinals, Commanders, but it's embarrassing that the Chiefs are down there given how successful they've been. But check out that full report because it's pretty interesting. And you always like to hear from the players, especially when they have the protection of their union to say this kind of stuff and anonymity.
But this is also kind of, this contributes to my point that um I always find that there is this idea of like certain material conditions of an NFL team simultaneously that can also like reflect their performance on the field. And obviously it's not one to one because the Chiefs are 29th, for example. But like I think there is a reason why specifically a few of these teams have similar grades across the board, that of like the Commanders, the Chargers, the Bengals, the Cardinals, like that are notoriously cheap ownership groups, traditionally pretty consistently dysfunctional, publicly dysfunctional
Exactly.
teams, and like that this stuff will ultimately sometimes seep into the on-field product and also be reflected outward as well in the conditions of the facilities and the also the experience as a fan, as an audience member as well. And I also think it's kind of a microcosm of some of the worst vestiges and the worst, um, characteristics of American capitalism too, in the sense
Mm-hmm.
that these teams and the people who work for these teams create so much money for the people who are tasked with making these conditions what they are supposed to be or what they should be in an ideal world. And the people who are doing it, their workforce, are like, we are making this much money for you and we don't even have a family room, or our weight room is infested with rats. Like
Yeah.
it makes you wonder, like, how can a league that prints money
So
for sometimes a bad product
yeah.
lead to these levels of conditions for teams that are making money, even as individual teams, to say nothing of the revenue sharing agreement these owners have and the deals they have. Just individual teams making this money hand over fist and not being able to provide this for their workers.
Well, Packers, despite the cold weather up there, in the top 10. So that one team that has a collective like public
Yeah,
ownership
interesting how that
structure.
works. But then
Not too bad.
then the every other owner in the league jumping in like the Kool-Aid man, being like, it's the Packers only. No
Yeah.
other team can do that, by the way. It was a one-time experiment and we're never doing it again.
And we're putting it in the freaking bylaws of the NFL
That's
to make
right.
sure it does never happen.
It'll be as difficult as passing another constitutional amendment to get another collectively owned NFL team. 2/3 of the country has to vote for it.
That's funny. All right. Well, that's kind of our NFL hour, I would say. Plus, let's talk about the Knicks now because this is fun. Those
Go New
damn
York, go New
Knicks.
York, go New York, go New York, go.
I'm happy. I mean, I did not think that buzzer beater to win it by Julius Randle against the Miami Heat, the win that took us to the 8-game win streak, was going to be topped. And then last night on national freaking television, with Jalen Brunson out first with a sore foot, arguably the Knicks' best player this year, him or Randle, right? And Randle's been more streaky. Brunson's been the most consistent. Like, I saw that DraftKings was doing a special to bet. It was like plus 450, and it was something like, Julius Randle to get 28 points and for the Knicks to win. And I was like, okay, they know something. A few hours later, Brunson's out. And I'm like, all right, the Knicks, it's been fun. Their win streak's going to come to an end. The Celtics are a great team, and it's just not going to happen tonight. Double overtime. Emmanuel quickly starting at the point in replacing Jalen Brunson. 55 minutes, 38 points, 7 assists, 8 rebounds, 4 steals. Double overtime. Emmanuel quickly skipping around the floor, having a grand old time like his hair's on fire. And his stat line's going to get the headlines, but he also played incredible defense the whole game. He's such a high energy player. And to see yet another Knicks draft pick fit so well into this system, even though Grimes has been getting less minutes, Grimes has been a really good value pick for a late first round pick. Same with Emmanuel quickly. There's something cooking here with the Knicks, and I can't believe I'm saying it, but this 9-game win streak is not a fluke.
And what's funny too about this period for the Knicks in this season is that I feel like me and you both at some point earlier were like, they're sort of in this limbo. They're sort of in this purgatory. Like they're playing well, but then there are times where they'll blow a huge lead or like go on a little bit of a slide to kind of just be in sort of the Eastern Conference's middle class.
Right.
Is there a case to be made to almost for them to not be performing like this, to trigger a reset? Because Tom Thibodeau may have reached his threshold as the head coach of a formerly middling team, and now they might need somebody else, not as a bridge coach, but to actually realize their potential. But I'm willing to be proven wrong. I'm willing to eat crow on this. Obviously, this is still the regular season, still 20 games to go, but at some point when you see a team like this win this many games in a row, and also in different ways too. I mean they blew out the Nets. They beat the Heat. They beat the Heat on that really tough shot that Julius Randle made, as you said. Gutting out a double overtime win, one of 3 wins I believe that they have against the Celtics. I mean, having 2 or 3 statement wins against the cream of the crop in their conference.
3 out of 4 in their matchups this year.
It's like, so to have a positive record against a division rival, the cream of the crop of the Eastern Conference, that to me is less.
And it's the Celtics.
And it's the Celtics, and that to me
Fuck
makes
Boston.
makes it
Joking.
less. No, it's okay. that to me makes it less fluky. Like, it makes it seem to me like there is something real here in terms of the formula they're finding, but also the individual players like playing up to what their potential is. Like I'm saying this as someone who was skeptical because I'm just like trained to be skeptical.
Same.
As a Knicks fan, like
I was saying, I was pissed about like I just wanted them to start playing their young guys and let's try to get
find something.
I don't want the play in. I'm sick of this play in crap.
Exactly.
I mean, let's make a decision on the future of the team. And I thought Thibodeau was. It was the same old story where he's playing his same veterans. They're going to get so tired in the regular season. He doesn't do the load management thing that Charles Barkley is so upset about. And they were going to falter in the playoffs, but they're a tough matchup for Boston.
Yeah.
Like Randall is giving them fits. It's his physicality or something. I'm not sure how to characterize it, but they haven't. He had over 30 points.
But that's part of it, though, for me, and when I'm talking about the individual performances, is that after the year that they made the playoffs and lost to the Hawks in the first round, I wasn't sure if either A, Julius Randle was going to be able to fit long term with the team, and B, whether he could feasibly be a number 1 option for a team, in the sense of like it was a combination of the shot selection, but also the efficiency with what those shots were coming. I felt like he was getting a little bit frustrated pretty quickly with some of the offense and the scheming. Like, I think he definitely is a bit of a moody person on the floor.
Yeah.
But I think that's just because he's very competitive and expects a lot, like as a high standard for the teams that he plays on, which I don't necessarily think is a bad trait, but sometimes you can see it palpably. But none of that has come through this season, where especially after a down year for the Knicks, I wasn't necessarily expecting Randall to be able to come back and play at this level again. Arguably, I would say he's playing better than he did in the 2021 season. And also, we obviously had a little bit, I think, a bit of as Knicks fans, and I think also people around the league. There were two things. There was the potential sticker shock, seeing the Jalen Brunson contract, wondering if Brunson at his size, whether and also clearly being a secondary component to Luka Doncic on the Mavs, could he be a number one option? Like, could he be the focal point, the fulcrum of a Knicks offense? Leading the dance and kind of filling the void that the Knicks have had at point guard for basically the entirety of their existence as an NBA franchise, outside of like Isaiah Thomas, and
certainly in our sentient
in our lifetimes, yeah. And then also thinking about the other void of potentially like, did we miss on taking a swing on Donovan Mitchell? Like, of course, these things were sort of hanging over even coming into the season. Will we be able to optimize this team under Jalen Brunson? And will we rue that we did not go for Donovan Mitchell instead? And while Mitchell has been really great on the Cavs, I think we can't undersell how crucial and invaluable Brunson's play has been as a result. He's not only the connective tissue for the playmaking on the team, but he plays so much more physically, and he punches above his weight class so consistently for a guy who's not that big, and his handle is so stifling because he has such a extensive array of moves that he can employ when he's off the dribble. It's really impressive to see these two guys really exceed my expectations, and I obviously don't like to attribute it only to two or three guys, but they are the reason the Knicks are playing this well.
And Josh Hart was the final kind of piece of. I mean, they're undefeated since he came to the team, and he brings a defensive tenacity and a discipline,
energy.
I mean, he's the man. I love Josh Hart already. I mean, he's like one of my favorite Knicks already.
And for simply a swap between him and Cam Reddish, who was not getting minutes, was not playing super
a Thibodeau guy,
and it seemed pretty visibly unhappy and wanting a reset. To get Josh Hart for him, that's a trade you do over and over again, and also it's paying dividends basically immediately.
And I was like, oh damn, they're gonna trade their first round pick for this, okay? But they still have the Mavericks first round pick, and the Mavericks, they did have that big win against the 76ers the other night, right? Like they beat that team. Was over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
But they were still kind of middling. They're a bit boom or bust, and they just have offensive firepower. They still are defensively a team that I don't have a ton of faith in with Kyrie and Luka. So, did they win last night too?
No, the Suns won at the.
That's why Luka was
because Luka in the last few seconds missed the game tying
and then
layup.
Devin Booker got
into each other's faces, double technicals. Then KD hit the last shot.
Gotcha.
To win the game.
Right. Okay. Again, everything's blending together, but yeah. So speaking of Donovan Mitchell, I did see that he tweeted at Emmanuel quickly last night saying, "Man, at IG Godson is hooping." Whatever. He's got 2 more years on that contract. Player option at the end. Just saying.
Where's the lie? I mean, Luka Doncic doesn't seem too happy in Dallas either. So, we'll Mark Cuban, call us.
Hey, we've got a bunch of first-round picks still.
Exactly.
All right. I want to talk a bit about the NHL trade deadline, and then we'll wrap up here and read some IMs. But I have to eat some crow on that Patrick Kane deal.
Yeah, right. I figured we should get to that. It was absolutely hysterical.
Look, I hate him, but look, he's on my team now. What am I supposed to do?
I feel like we sort of,
and he's also 0-2 since they've acquired him.
Right.
So I feel like the Rangers might have gotten cursed in this situation, but at the same time, they had such. The NHL is so Byzantine, and the cap machinations are so ridiculous. The Rangers have been playing 2 men down for the past 5 games, more to both make room for Patrick Kane, and then also because Keandre Miller was suspended and they still have to make the cap work. They can't recall another defenseman. It's just it's so dumb that the rest of the league is keeping this cap so low. And I'll get to the Arizona Coyotes in a second, but yeah, that's
because it also just makes, honestly, from those types of machinations, it makes the product worse. Because if you are coming into a game shorthanded for those reasons, inevitably the players are going to get way more tired and the shifts will just not work the way that they're supposed to because they're missing two guys who would be in those shifts potentially.
Yeah,
it just makes no sense.
I mean, they did not even play that badly against the Boston Bruins on Saturday, but the dam eventually broke, and the Bruins are the best team in the league. So it ended up kind of falling apart for them, but. We'll see if this gels. I mean, Panarin was trying to force it to Kane on Saturday, and they need some more time to gel. They, for some reason, don't play until Thursday, and then they play a back-to-back, and then they play on next Tuesday, and I'm going to that game against the Capitals. So I hope they frickin' get their shit together by then, because I want to have a nice time, okay?
at the Garden.
I would like to have a nice time, and I'm bringing people to that game who don't really watch hockey. My best friend and her fiance.
So you want it to be exciting.
I want the product to be good for them, so that I can maybe bring them more often to these kinds of situations and have friends to go with me, not just my boyfriend, who's the only person who ever wants to go to me to this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I think, I don't know. I do think sometimes this, even if it takes a little bit of time, I really do think it's possible for even just a few more games for this type of thing to gel. It doesn't, I think sometimes just purely in certain it's obviously not the case in every circumstance, but I do think talent wills out to a degree, and I think the Rangers are a well-coached team, and I think that it's at some point when these lines start to congeal and like mesh pretty in that it'll be hard to just kind of withstand like the shot making and shot creating abilities of just having Vladimir Tarasenko and Patrick Kane,
right,
and Chris Kreider and Adam Fox. Like it's
and Artemi Panarin and the kid line
and Panarin, who, like you said, even though he might be forcing it, at some point those two guys will. That mesh point, I think, is almost more of a given, just because of how much experience those guys had in a different time together.
Yeah.
I think maybe it'll take some time because, of course, there also just might be some premature excitement there between those two guys wanting it to happen. But I think at some point when it feels more natural as they become teammates again, it'll come as well. But I just think ultimately there's too much talent there for it to be completely stifled.
And then the Rangers just are like not that worried about the regular season right now. They're gonna face the Devils most likely, or the Hurricanes in the first round. They're not gonna win the division. It's just gonna be if they're the second or third seed in the division.
Right.
They should be worried if they fall into the wild card. But right now there's such a big gap between the Rangers and the other teams in the wild card race, like the Islanders and the Penguins, and the Red Wings, for example. But it seems like we're on a collision course for Rangers Devils in the first round, and that'll be very fun episode of ESVN.
Oh, so excited!
I saw you were wearing over the weekend
my Kyle Palmieri jersey.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. We'll don those.
Only I was a few of my friends who I was with who follow hockey were like, dude, like he has been on the Devils in like 6 years.
Yeah, I was like, no worries. Those jerseys are expensive. Yeah, keep recycling.
Yeah, I gotta rep my boys any way I can. Not every day I can just get a Jack Hughes jersey.
Not every day, exactly.
I also, just from the Devils' perspective, I was pleased with the Timo Meier acquisition as well.
I wanted to get to that.
I think that is like
perfect.
If they were going to make anything happen from before the deadline expires, I think he is a pretty seamless addition to a team, and I think kind of like a pretty clear need.
Size of the forward position.
Yeah, being satisfied going into this stretch run right before the playoffs start, and he started off with a bang. Basically, I think either his first or second game he got a goal. So that's also partially why I'm thinking the same thing with Kane, is that I think it sometimes might take some time. It's not always immediate, but I just do think that talented players don't. Unless you're like, unfortunately, unless somebody's with if there's severe chemistry issues, like there's sometimes were with like like the Nets, for example, or something like that, or like the Hawks, now with like DeJounte Murray and Trae Young, as just like a cross sport example. I just really do think enough talent will bear out.
Yeah, and the Rangers also have flexibility where they can put Kane on the top line with Kreider and Zibanejad centering that,
and
they can flip Tarasenko down to the line with Trocheck and Panarin. So.
There's nothing hard and fast yet. They can totally experiment as to who gels with who.
Yeah,
and they'll find that.
Yeah,
those lineup machinations will ultimately bear fruit at some point, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I think just defensively, the Rangers have to kind of figure that out. They're giving up a ton of chances off the rush. But the Bruins also, I just got to note, like, I don't even know how anyone's going to defeat them now that they have Dmitry Orlov and they got Tyler Bertuzzi from the Red Wings. And and Taylor Hall's injured, and there's no, because the NHL's idiotic, there's no salary cap in the playoffs, as the Tampa Bay Lightning have told us year after year and shown to us. They're cheaters, and the Bruins are like, well, we can cheat too. And Taylor Hall will just keep him on IR probably for the rest of the season, then bring him back for the playoff run. So, it's I joke that it's cheating, but it's not isn't actually cheating, but it's a ridiculous provision in the NFL bylaws. But here's actually what bothers me, and I'm about to rant about the Arizona Coyotes. Okay,
do it.
The Arizona Coyotes are one step away from a money laundering operation. They should be investigated. They should be investigated by, like, I don't know who, but somebody needs to look into this disgusting disaster of a team.
You mean the Arizona State Coyotes?
Yes, but if it was Arizona State, they might have more fans because.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean their arena.
At least college kids want to go,
right? As opposed to, I don't know, a team that trades a player like Jacob Chikrin, who they told us for years why they held off last year. We just want to hold on to him for a great return so we can keep accumulating draft capital and rebuild this team.
What was that?
Wait,
what happened?
Just kidding. Because we are too cheap as a franchise to retain any salary, which is essentially a prerequisite for trading a player like that to a contender, which is what Chikrin wanted, obviously. They could have gotten more in return, draft capital-wise, to trade him to a contender and get more picks and rebuild their team the right way. But they did not want to retain any money because the owner of this team, I don't even know who the owner is, but he's a criminal, basically, that is one of their 6 owners in the last 10 years or whatever the case is. What's the owner's name? Also NHL owners are the cheapest owners. 2 guys, Alex Merulio and Andrew Barraway, a hedge fund manager and a banker, whatever. Either way, sell the damn team and get him out. Get this team out of Arizona. It's just not going to happen. Bring them back to Quebec or something. I mean, get Quebec City, I should say, a team. Because this is what they are doing, taking less value in a trade, sending Chikrin to the Ottawa Senators for a conditional first-round pick in this draft, and then a conditional second next year. Like, I think they also got another pick too, lower and further down the line, but they didn't get any prospects back. They just got more picks, one of them being conditional on the first round, and it was really just because the Ottawa Senators were going to take his entire salary. That is crazy because the Coyotes certainly have the capacity to pay it. They are only paying $32 million for forwards right now, around $8 million for defensemen. I'm rounding up, $3.5 million for goalies. And the salary cap floor is like a little over $60 million. The rest of it is just IR cap machinations and dead cap and things like that. They are taking, I cannot believe it, less value in a trade because they're too cheap to actually pay while still being cap compliant. It's like the rest of the league also just uses them as a money launderer for the rest of their transactions. The Rangers, they sent them a 3rd-round pick to do it for the Kane deal. They should not be allowed. They're driving down the value for the rest of the league, and they're also preventing players from getting paid because they're so poorly valued and refuse to spend any damn money that the salary cap is not going to go up because of these complete albatross is like the Arizona Coyotes. Sell the damn team. You guys can't even afford to pay to be in your own stadium. Like, how are we going to grow this sport, which already has such a huge issue in marketing itself, self-imposingly so? They put it on themselves. I don't even know if they care about growing the sport, because then the owners might have to pay more, and they're already the cheapest owners possible. If you're an NHL owner and you own a professional team and you're a cheap guy, you're going to pay for a hockey team, not a football team or a basketball team. Like, it's collusion, and it's unfair to the rest of these high-end guys that they are hamstrung by organizations making the league actively worse because they're too greedy to actually grow the game. So this is the limitations also of having billionaires own these franchises. It's embarrassing. The Arizona Coyotes need to be expelled from the NHL.
And this is what happens. And well, ideally, this type of management structure or trend doesn't extend beyond the Arizona State University campus in the NHL for the NHL's purposes, because we're seeing similar trends like this happen in the MLB, where rich owners basically are treating these teams as just simply like distressed assets to make money off of, while just basically earning via passive income, not trying to spend to make the team better, not trying to attract free agents, not trying to make trades, not trying to extract any sort of value, squeezing every dollar out of these players via arbitration when they have the chance to, and essentially all but actively saying to their fans, their shareholders, their staff that we are not trying to win baseball games.
Yeah.
We are a team that exists, but we will basically refuse to pay players until they come to us and are willing to play ball under our terms and are willing to take our terrible below market deals, because the only place that these guys can play is if they're not getting signed by some of the 4 to 7 teams in the MLB that are willing to compete and spend money. If they're not signing you, you got to come play ball in Kansas City. You got to come play ball in Pittsburgh. You got to come play ball for the Texas Rangers, and you're going to take the money that we're going to give you, as opposed to these. It is de facto bad faith negotiating, and it's barely negotiating, because it's essentially capturing the players, the workforce, the laborers in an agreement that they have to take if they want to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so
they can get drafted there. They have. I pray to God they do not win the lottery, and damn.
Right.
Bedard has
to go to Phoenix or go to Tempe or wherever they are. Yeah. And that's just, I think, a similar it's a microcosm of a larger issue in the MLB, specifically with this team within the Coyotes. But that behavior, the way that operating style, it can be contagious, and it can be super problematic for not the owners but the players.
Yeah.
That will get less of the pie because one team is actively unwilling to pay into the pie.
It's embarrassing. So I hope that I keep thinking that the Coyotes can't embarrass the NHL enough, and that we're just in this continuous cycle where they're gonna drag down the rest of the league. But maybe this is the straw that breaks the camel's back. I mean, I can only hope. All right, guys, with that, we're going to wrap up. I do also want to say I support Ja Morant. What he did was wrong, but this dude's 23 years old. Enough piling on. Enough. And he might come from a different background, and he's still maturing, but we don't need a class of like professional NBA players who are kids of athletes and have grown up in this system completely squeaky clean to dominate the league. This is the league that had Allen Iverson in it. I mean, some of the greatest stars came from backgrounds where they weren't, necessarily, like squeaky clean, I guess. And so you have to provide him with like a certain amount of grace. And just seeing Skip Bayless insinuate he was a part of the Crips on TV today just made me grossed out. So, I hope Ja Morant is just getting help and okay, and that this doesn't, change the trajectory of his career. But like, of course, he should not be bringing a gun to a club.
No, the conduct is not. There's no question that the conduct is not acceptable, but it's also a question of how people then react to it.
Yeah.
And like, I don't necessarily know how helpful it is for an entire media class to scold him and chide him and say that he's behaving so poorly, and that I think that's clear, and I think the focus should be on is making sure that he can right these wrongs, surround himself, make better decisions, and surround himself with people who will reinforce making those better decisions, and for him to be able to continue playing basketball, because he's a very young person, and
whatever he's going through, I hope he's like okay. And
right.
I mean,
I think the focus should be on rehabilitation as opposed to making strong generalizations and casting aspersions on his character. He's 21 years old.
It's just, and yeah, I mean, he's very young, and
or 23, excuse me.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, like, also where he was in that club, it's an open carry state. It's just the issue at hand was that he was clearly like probably drinking at that time. So I don't really know. But
it's not excusable, but he's like, there needs to be ways to help him through this that aren't just telling him that he's irredeemable. Like, he fucked up. People make bad choices.
I'm sorry, guys, but like, athletes carry guns. Like, that's something that happens quite regularly. I'm a fan of the New York Giants. They might have won back-to-back Super Bowls if Plaxico Burress hadn't shot himself. So it doesn't make it right, but like, it's also just these are young guys. They sometimes do dumb things.
And it's also not for nothing. We have an entire this. I'm not to make such a massive bird's eye viewpoint about this, but I saw this slightly or casually mentioned on Twitter by some people. We have an entire political party that's part of its project is just being able to ostentatiously and visibly parade your weapons around with no consequences whatsoever. We had a member of Congress in a committee hearing take out his own firearm and load it during testimony. So, like, there's a culture around this that's not just black kids or black men or black people brandishing their firearms to like look like or propose or establish themselves as having some sort of gangster credibility.
Yeah.
That it goes both ways. And for some it's just completely sanctioned and encouraged, and for others it's chided and seen as a real comment on their character.
Yeah. I
mean,
mean,
that's not to excuse it. It's just saying there are double standards that are at play, and I think they're worth acknowledging.
As Van Lathan said on Higher Learning, come on to the corny side, John Moran. It's okay to be corny. You don't need to carry a gun everywhere. You have enough money where it's not an issue.
You don't need to get in fights. Like, there's no need for that.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think he'll be okay. I'm hoping that he'll be okay. All right, guys, we are going to head out. Thank you so much for paying attention. Like this stream, rate us 5 stars if you enjoy the show. We will see you on Monday. Welcome back, Bradley. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.